Well, let's begin this hour with the recent report that the central bank, of course, has come under probe as President Bola Tinubu appoints a sole investigator to conduct a probe of the bank and its affiliates. Initial revelations show that the bank has not published audited accounts for 7 years, as required by law. The Senate, by the Constitution, is required to receive such reports annually. Well, the released consolidated financial statements show heavy indebtedness to foreign financial institutions to the tune of $7.5 billion at the end of 2022 financial year. Questions are being asked how the Red Chambers failed to carry out its oversight function on the CBN, and why the Auditor General of the Federation not query these shortcomings by the Apex Bank. Arise News analyst Dr. Sam Amadi joins me now in the studio to look at this issue. Thank you so much for joining us on the news tonight. I think those are very valid questions, and that's a good place to begin. How did this happen without oversight, without the Debt Management Office, the Auditor General? I think it's a long list of people who should have conducted checks and balances.
Absolutely. Again, I mean, you have to put this in the context that this is the first time the central bank didn't submit these annual reports. The Central Bank Act requires that this is submitted within 2 months of the end of every financial year. They have to submit to the President and also to the National Assembly. Now, if you look at the Constitution, from Section 80 to 84, 85, talks about the oversight function of the National Assembly, and that is primarily over finances institutions. So the question is, if the central bank did not, and of course the problem is the central bank publish some of their state of health is published on their website at variance with what they have in the annual report not submitted. We're now knowing that even though they say that about $17 billion reserve, they were about 18 if you do the net of all the indebtedness and so on. So the state of affairs, financial state of affairs, is not as portrayed. Now the essence of legislative oversight is that once every agency, commission, ministry, they submit the annual report, which is sent to the National Assembly, the audit committee, reviews them. The Auditor General of the Federation, who has reviewed them himself, makes some notation as to discrepancies, which will now trigger review by the National Assembly through questioning. Now, if you have done that kind of due diligence, probably some of the issues around the reports in terms of how much of reserve was used as collateral to secure, and how much even the central bank itself paid out to its staff in terms of loan and all that would have been clear. The real question here is that in the last 7 years of Obasanjo's Buhari's government, we saw total collapse of oversight, vertical and horizontal accountability agencies, and this is critical. You see the Air Nigeria crisis, the National Assembly didn't know what was going on. We're talking about the central bank now. Homeland security, in terms of Homeland and the emergency ministry that was dealing with COVID palliatives, several issues, and each of them betray the fact that there was some kind of no accountability. Now, the Senate President then, Lawal, of course, boasted that his job is to make sure that whatever the President actually gets. And so the result is what we're seeing now. He never bothered to do any rigorous oversight, whether of the security issues raised, whether of economic oversight. We didn't see anything like that. And so while people are busy attacking the central bank, they shouldn't forget that the real four guys, the guys who should carry the bag here, should be the President, should be the Auditor General, who has statutory responsibility over accounts of all public institutions in Nigeria, should be the National Assembly that first created the CBN Act, that has custody of that act, and that has superintendence over central bank, especially in the management of its affairs. Again, if you look at globally, the compromise between giving the central bank independence under Soludo, the new act, is that they are free to run monetary policy. But the bargain is that there is oversight of their actions, whether policy-wise or administration. So what we saw, and of course people are questioning issues about ways and means, over-bloated, going against the act in giving more than 5%, borrowing to the federal government of their annual, Nigeria's budget. The question is, these are very clear violation of the act, and the work of the National Assembly in Oversight is actually to police the law they made, to ensure that appropriations are used as and examine agencies so that they can go back and see if the laws they made works. So this kind of slipping on the wheel totally characterizes the Lawan Senate. And again, let's not forget, it's both House and Senate. So Benjamin Alawi, the chief of staff, was also the helmsman at the House of Reps. So the two agencies under those two leadership failed woefully for 7 years. 7 years. That means, apart from the year in which Buhari came into power in 2015, from 2016 till the exit, there was no single day that this government complied with the basic requirement of both of probity, of accountability, and of even of the law. That's really how bad it was.
Okay, so we know that the central bank is the federal government's bank and the Bank for Nigeria. So when the governor of Edo State at that time was raising the alarm over, excess printing of money for the federal government, would you say he has been vindicated? And how concerned should we be over these foreign borrowings without approval? Foreign borrowings in itself, is it an issue, or is it foreign borrowings without the approval?
Well, I think first he says, how is it, has it been justified? Of course,
yes.
He's now justified. And that brings up another issue. When people speak against the government or raise concerns, they are shut down. I remember clearly what happened when the governor of Edo State, a brilliant guy who understands the financial market, and he spoke authoritatively that they are printing money. Again, he was shut down. Again, in the National Assembly, the matter came up, and this first lady today was the one who shot back at one of the senators and said, why do you have to bring this up? This is a talking point of PDP. So this is why we need to have bipartisan. We need to have critical persons raise issues, because if Nigerians took it serious then, and the regulators, the central bank themselves, the National Assembly itself and others, weighed in and looked at the matter, we probably won't get to this point. Now the issue is whether foreign debts are any problem. The reason why you have the Fiscal Responsibility Act, the reason why you have the DMO Act, and the reason why you have controls in the CBN Act and even in the Constitution is to ensure three things. One is that those borrowings are relevant and prudent. I mean, people are raising issues around the cost of the foreign borrowing from the foreign banks. And the collateralization, that the cost is high. If they were under proper scrutiny, they probably could have negotiated, less expensive borrowings. So first is the due process, so people know what's going on, and so we know whether there's some rip-off or sweetheart deals. Number one. Number two is that because foreign borrowing, especially, exposes the economy to volatility and also it impinges on sovereignty, it has to be done with legitimacy. Institutions, political accountable institutions themselves have to sign on and approve. So when the federal government has to table a borrowing request to the National Assembly, it's because, legally speaking, that borrowing constitutes a treaty, it constitutes a law. When the federal government signs a World Bank, it's a treaty, it's a law. It has to be domesticated. And the prior approval of the National Assembly is key. Secondly, it gives opportunity for the National Assembly to push back on the executive, to explain. And then in that explanation, the rigor, if there are loopholes, if there are failures, if there are some woolly thinking, the government will prepare itself. The FRC, the Fiscal Responsibility Act and the DMO Act, requires cost-benefit analysis before you borrow money. And I saw the borrowing instruments and some of the requests in the National Assembly, and I wrote on here from some groups to say, look, they have not made a case for cost-benefit analysis. You have to show that this borrowing has to produce the expected economic value and this expected economic cost. So that gives the people's reps the opportunity to say this borrowing makes sense in the short to medium or long term for the nation. So when you compromise this oversight, and this is a lesson now for the new executive, unfortunately, the way Amadi is going, it doesn't look like he would be different. We should not see the National Assembly as an institution wedded to support or prop up the executive. The reason
An
why,
appendage of the executive.
exactly.
Well,
So if you don't have that, then you're going to get to this problem repeatedly. And so this is not about Emefiele only. It's about the failed National Assembly and failed 8 years of Buhari's administration.
Thank you so much, Dr. Sam Amadi, for your analysis as always. We do appreciate it.